All right, Greg, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, why don't you give us a quick minute on who you are and what you do, and then we'll get into it.
So I am, as I just said, Gregg Majewski. I am the CEO of Craveworthy Brands, which I am extremely excited about. I guess I'm also CEO and founder of this company. We are a new platform company in the restaurant industry that is geared towards helping emerging brands grow and get to scale on a national scale. So in the first year of operation, we went from 0 brands to 11, from 0 restaurants to 200 plus open and 500 sold in our first year through different acquisitions and startups of our own.
And so, was the strategy when you started this, was it like a hold co? Is it a private equity fund? Like, what's the actual structure?
So we are a holdco. But we operate with the same principles as a PE fund. So, which makes that so unique and so different than everybody else is that we don't have the love affair for one individual brand. We wanted to scale our risk across many brands in a short amount of time. So we have a lot of principles that obviously are PE like, with the main focus being that the shared service model help everyone go. But if one brand's not doing it, it's okay to go ahead and let that one go. Not all brands are going to be successful in this industry.
And did you have your background? You were at Jimmy John's for how long? Like 20 years?
Nope. So I was at Jimmy John's from joined when we had 30 restaurants, left when we had 300 open and 700 sold. So for about 6 years total was my time, and then was at Jimmy John's and a franchisee. Since then, have built two other companies to multi, 100 units, and have opened up a ton of restaurants of my own over the last couple of years. Plus, consulted for every major restaurant player in the world.
So, a franchise guy and a restaurant guy through and through.
Yep, 100%.
And you said you went from 30 to 300 restaurants at Jimmy John's. Was that in 6 years?
That was in 6 years.
Okay,
So and then
what?
700 sold during that time.
All right, so lots to unpack there. So first of all, what does it take to get from 0 to 30 is one thing, but to go from 30 to 300, I'd imagine is very different from going 0 to 30. So what kind of systems, or maybe if, I don't know if there were systems, but what are you walking into at a 30 chain restaurant, and what do you have to build to get it to 300 chains, 300 locations?
So, I mean, you got to build systems for every part of the business, from accounting to advertising to purchasing to store operations. I mean, each and every part of the business had to be as detailed as you possibly could. What was so wonderful about Jimmy John's was we had an incredible product. We had a simple operation: 5 meats, 1 cheese, 2 bread doughs. That was it. I mean, so when you think about it, all we had to do was be freaky fast. And so we pushed that envelope, and ops was outstanding. Jimmy was one of the best operators in the industry. And where he lacked was in the other avenues of the business. So when I got there and I came in as an intern, which was amazing, I started as an intern. We had no accounting systems at all. We were using a DOS based accounting program that was barely keeping track of what we were collecting or not collecting. So my first job was to systemize the accounting office, and Jimmy and I hit it off, and then we started systemizing and putting everything we were so good at in the restaurant space into every avenue of our business. So we created the same type of systems for everything.
So when you come in and you have no accounting system, how many locations were you at that point?
So we had 30 restaurants at that point.
30 restaurants, no accounting system.
Nope.
A shoebox. And so are you just like, you said you were an intern when you started?
Yeah. So, I mean, I started before my internship started when there was about 24 restaurants. And yeah, I started as an intern full time when we hit 30. So it was a wild ride. And then from there, I went from controller to CFO to chief operating officer to CEO in about 18 months time frame.
But even as an intern, how do you have it in your head that, okay, we don't have an accounting system, so let's do that? I mean, what background did you have that even qualified you to do that?
So I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. I grew up in a business world. And so I watched my dad's company and other companies that I was associated with be so disciplined in keeping track. Plus, my degree was in accounting, obviously, so we knew the basics of what we needed to do. So I got a degree that specialized in forensic accounting, and that sort of allowed me to dig in, and I was a very system guy. So I had to have a system on everything that we do. How do we keep track of the money? How do we account for it? How quick can I get financial statements? How quick can I get a scorecard for us to read to be able to benefit the ops so they knew what they needed to do to be better every day? And those were the focuses that we had to get on. And those were just easy. Like anyone who had the time, the problem was he was going so fast that he just didn't care. Money was in the bank account and he was good, and that's typical in the restaurant space.
Yeah, getting to 30 locations was actually pretty impressive. What do you think would have happened had you not come along at that point?
I mean, I'm sure he would have survived. The brand was great. I'm not, we just sort of, because I was in the right place at the right time, we sort of created the synergy that was perfect for both of us. And because of that, we both, I think, won big because of it. Would he have found somebody else to do it? Sure. Would he have done what he thought he would have done? I'm going to say no, just because I believe in what I can do.
Yeah, and going from 30 to 300, like you said, it's so much about systems across advertising and finance, and everything has to be a well-oiled machine. Is that common, though? You said a minute ago that in the restaurant space, a lot of it is just like, what do we have in the bank account and can we pay the bills? Is that how restaurants actually run?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the way a lot of them run, especially the smaller groups. So I'm involved. I just got involved with Dirty Dough, and Dirty Dough's accounting is an absolute nightmare. It took us 4 months to get a financial statement from the past year because they didn't have an accurate scorecard. And so we took an equity piece of that company because there was an opportunity, but nowhere in my wildest dreams would I've walked in and seen the same sort of situation with a brand that was growing so fast. But they went from 0 to 60 in less than 18 months. So it was like they were drinking through a fire hose. And
Yeah,
that's very, very common.
it's very common. 60 locations, and you still don't have the systems in place. So let's talk about that. Dirty Dough, a cookie chain, and there's a bunch of these sort of premium types of cookie chains. What attracts you to a business like that?
So it's the opportunity for the growth. It's the opportunity for being something different and then competing with somebody who's already sort of got the head start on you. So Crumble obviously has the head start, 900 plus units, everybody across the country, but yet their cookie is just average. And so if you could do it different and then add other segments into the brand, you can then take away a huge market share from them because you can be more than just a cookie shop. And that's really what we wanted to do and why I was so excited about Dirty Dough. We're pivoting that from just cookies to cookie inspired options. So ice cream, dirty drinks, coffee, all these other avenues so we can not just rely on that one simple cookie aspect, but every one of these items will have a cookie inspired. So our dirty drinks that are going to roll out in the beginning of May, all are cookie type flavors. And just something different to attract the customer more than a treat once every couple weeks. Now you can come in and get a drink and a cookie and make it a snack just like you do when you go to Dunkin' or anyone else out there.
I love that you're slamming Crumble. So I did a piece on Crumble that hundreds of thousands of people read it, and one of the biggest comments was, or the comment with the most likes was, "This brand is so cool considering that their cookie is so average." So I don't know, and they really their branding is actually incredible. It's very loud. It's very cool. But that's interesting that you can see the difference also. I mean, you put your money where your mouth is. You actually invested in Dirty Dough, knowing that they have a better product.
So, an extremely better product and differentiates ourselves. We own the production of that product. So, we then are also the CPG component of that business, which is so exciting to me because it gave me two revenue streams on top of just being the cookie franchisee or franchisor. Um, but Crumble is one of the best out there at the social media game. They built that entire brand on social media. And because of that, it's a house of cards. At some point, and you can see it in franchise sales and you can see it in the stores that go up for sale right away. These franchisees open up these restaurants, open up with huge numbers. They're for sale within 3 months, trying to get, this huge, stupid amount of money. Because look at me, I'm doing, my store's going to do 1.8 million in its first year. If you actually go and look in the details later, they're 3 months in and they're extrapolating this grand opening phase, and that's BS. And, but again, you can see the writing on the wall. It's a social media play. And I'll get myself in trouble for saying it, but I got myself in trouble by saying Subway sucked back in the day too. But they did.
They did. They did. So what? Obviously you have a combative style and you believe in it because you've been doing it for so long. What is it about the franchise? Because I think people, and myself included, the franchise world is very different from just running a business where you own 100 locations. To set up a proper franchise business where the franchisees thrive and the franchisors thrive, what does that take? What does a successful franchise look like?
So, I mean, the franchisor has to always remember that their customer is their franchisee, and your job is to make sure the franchisee wins. So, I talk about all the time that the greatest thing about the franchise space is that you're giving people the opportunity to create the American dream. You're giving them a chance to be a part and own something that typically they would never go out and do because the risk of going out on your own is so much greater than the risk of buying a franchise. You have some protections in there. You have branding, you have operations. The four box economics should be working for a brand, and you have this sort of security. But you're giving them this opportunity then to go and build the American dream. And that's what makes franchising so cool and so special. And the great franchisors constantly are reminding themselves that, hey, we have to make sure every decision we make helps their bottom line. And too many of them out there only care about the franchise or bottom line. And so they'll make decisions to improve theirs, but hurt their franchisees long term. The best focus 100% of their time on making sure their franchisees win. And that's sort of what I staked my reputation on now for 26 years. My franchisees are more important to me than my bottom line. My bottom line works out if the brand's successful. That's just by default. But if they're not successful, I fail. It's so simple, so easy to do, but so hard to get people to understand that the importance is they're your customer. Just like you fight for your customers coming in every day, you fight for their success.
What's the gold standard franchise out there today?
I mean, Chick-fil-A is obviously the biggest one out there based on volume and everything else. And they care so much about having the franchisees be in place. For the longest time, you could own one. You could only own one store because they knew that they were going to make money. They wanted the service right. They wanted the brand protected. And because of that, they won big. Now they're doing $9.2 million a store, as they announced today, I believe. That number is so ridiculously big that they've done everything right. There's other ones that have done great. Obviously, Jimmy John's did an incredible job. We took first time operators that had no restaurant experience, got them to buy into the culture of this brand and the DNA, work their butts off to build a brand. And then they were seeing 25, 30% profit back in the day. I mean, and because of that, we were able to make so many great steps that we created these one stores to now some of them have 30, 40 restaurants today. And they started with one, and it was their whole net worth at the time that they put into it. Those are successful stories. You have other stories of failures. Burger IM was the biggest one in the industry that just happened, where that guy completely didn't care about his franchisees at all and got sued out of his brains and is now can never sell another franchise in any industry because he broke so many laws. I mean, so there's good and there's bad all the time.
Why did Quiznos fail?
In true honesty, they over leveraged their franchisees. They were the bank and they were competing against a market that was about speed at the point, and they were the slowest sandwich in the world. So it was more of a fact that wrong time, wrong place. Sandwich was good, but yet we just destroyed them back then. I mean, we could produce a sandwich in 15 seconds, and you stood there, twiddling your thumbs in a Quiznos back in the day for 4 or 5 minutes to wait for that same sandwich. It was a combination of everything. But their franchise group got a little greedy. They became the bank.
And then looking at a player like Subway, who you said has a subpar sandwich, why are they, what is it, like 27,000 locations? That might be wrong, but it's a lot.
So Subway built their model on buying a job. So there's franchise groups out there that sell, and you buy yourself a job. And you have to have multiple stores to get out of that point. But most Subway franchisees back in the day had one, two, or three. And they would make $30,000 to $40,000. They weren't making a ton of money. where you could go and buy one Jimmy John's back in the day. And I had stores that netted, 250, 300,000. Why would you ever compete? But yet they had a niche that they wanted to be everywhere. Their sales as a collective group went up. The franchisee or made a ton of money. The franchisee did not. Jimmy John's and our brands and anything I do at Craveworthy make sure that my franchisees have this protected territory so they win. I don't put stores on top of each other so we can go ahead and have, more sales. I'll lose sales on my side so my franchisee has more sales. And Subway would put them within, as everyone knows, within every 2 blocks in some areas in urban spaces. How are you going to do volume in that? You're not. The company has
37,000
incremental, but the
37,000
franchise.
locations. I mean, yeah, you need a lot of dense space to make that happen. So talk about your group right now. So you've got Dirty Dough. What are your other assets?
So we have Genghis Grill, BD's Mongolian, Flat Top Grill, Sum Sum Mediterranean, Crafted Burger and Bar, Wing It On, and Budlong Southern Chicken. Those are the ones that are out front. And then we have a virtual group of brands called Craveworthy Kitchen that we put into our existing restaurants. So those brick and mortar ones get to operate Craveworthy Kitchen as well, which is a bunch of virtual brands. And each one of our brands has 3 unique virtual brands that go with it that they then can add another 200,000 to 300,000 in incremental top line revenue. So they can franchisees can pay G&A through those other services.
All right. So if I'm understanding what you're saying, this is the model where you have one physical restaurant location, but you operate 2 or 3 or 4 brands out of it. And is that so you can play on DoorDash and Uber Eats with other
Yep.
names?
Correct. And so we do that in other names, different products completely. And now we're going so far as that you can actually come into Genghis and order Lucky Cat while you're sitting in Genghis. So we're allowing our customers to have that variety of choice. We're not ashamed of having these other brands. We love these other brands. The brands are outstanding. So why not have that customer come in and get it when they want to dine in as well and just build my top line revenue so my franchisees can have a bigger win all the time. So more sales using the G&A that they already have and making sure that they're able to win. And because it's the same franchise fee, same purchasing dollars, same marketing, everything, they don't have to pay these enormous fees to other virtual brands that are out there like Mr. Beast Burgers and stuff like that that take a huge, huge percent of what you do.
But isn't the downside there that they have to worry about maintaining multiple brands and brand image or
Simple.
an Instagram page, or they don't have to do that?
We do all that. They don't do any of that. That's the part of being a franchisee. We handle all that. We handle the marketing and handle all that. Their kitchen, when an order comes in, it's just another item that they have to make. They don't even know a difference because it's entrained in what we do.
And then on your side, doesn't that become cumbersome? Do you ever wish, I wish I didn't have 19 brands, I wish I had 4?
No, because my if my franchisees are winning, that means I win. And if I can help them pay their rent through other revenue streams, then all they do is become more profitable. And if they're more profitable, that's going to lead them to opening up another store. And if they open up another store, it means I'm going to make more money. So it's this constant ebb and flow of how you build the business.
What do you think about the DoorDash Grubhub model? Obviously, they had a surge during COVID. I don't know how they're doing now. Do you think they're A, are they friends of the restaurants? And B, do they survive in the next 10 years?
So they're a necessary evil of the restaurant space. Um, they there's something that helped save the restaurant industry during COVID, no doubt about it. But they're a necessary evil now because the consumer has changed the way that they eat. And they are so used to doing it. And kids, especially this younger generation, will order a 99-cent burger from McDonald's, pay a $7 delivery fee, and now have an $8 burger. It's extremely stupid, but at the same time, it's what has been built into our DNA. I think they'll see I think for us to long term be successful, their fees are going to have to drop and they're going to have to figure out a way to make money on less, just like all of us, because the restaurants can't continue to afford to pay 20% to them to sort of cover everything. But they're not going anywhere. The model will just change.
So you think that they're around? And what about the whole world of like classic restaurant delivery? Is that just I mean, aside from if you're Domino's, is that just obsolete now?
No, I think the right brands will focus on that. And I think that's going to be the biggest win for the brands that want to get into it again. You'll see DoorDash sort of hover around and be there, and then you'll start seeing like everything of change in guards, and people will start bringing delivery back to themselves because they want to control the product. And being able to deliver yourself to your customer in 10 minutes instead of DoorDash waiting for a driver to come, waiting for the food to get out, and then them having their DoorDash and Grubhub orders and picking up 3 orders at the same time and going all over the place. Restaurants are going to go back to wanting their food to be king. And so you'll see pizza. And again, Jimmy John's created a whole segment in delivery. We were the third number biggest food item that was delivered. It was pizza, Chinese food, and then subs. And that was all Jimmy John's back in the day. And now everyone delivers. So I do think you'll see these brands going back and focusing on what they should be.
I've heard the stat that restaurants have the highest failure rate of any business. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's definitely a high failure rate. Why are restaurants so hard to operate?
So, because most people that get into it think it's going to be simple and it's a lifelong dream of theirs to open up their own restaurant, and those fail. Most franchise concepts don't fail. So, if you go and become a franchisee of a concept, your chance of success is not even remotely what that other figure is. But independents struggle. They've never done it before. But yet, because you cook at home, there's so many that think, oh, I cook at home. I cook these great big meals. I can do this no problem. And then they realize they can't. I mean, there's shows all over cable about restaurant impossible and restaurant failures. There's a reason why they're out there. It's not easy, but it is easy to fix if you put the operations in the right spot.
Operations, accounting, I mean, really, it's a game of numbers. And I would imagine a lot of the people that go into the restaurant business are just chefs. They know how to make a delicious pasta, and like that's cool. But if you don't know your math, there's no point in doing it.
And I've invested in a lot of chef concepts over the years. And the reason why I do it is because I believe in the chef. But I get into bed with them because they don't know how to do the business aspect of it. So we do the business aspect for them until they get paid, until we pay everything, and then we can hand it over to them to make sure they survive. So I do that when I find a chef that I like, and that's sort of like a give back to me because I do believe in chefs. But most chefs don't have the other aspect. They all think it's just about their food and the service, and they're great at that aspect. They suck at paying bills, because again, they don't keep track of everything. And that's just the stereotype. And unfortunately, the stereotype is true sometimes.
We've all seen the bear, so we know what happens.
Yep.
So let's talk about this company of yours. And so, why did you decide to actually start a private equity holdco? Like, why not just go lead franchising for you know McDonald's?
I wanted to give back and give emerging brands the opportunity that I had at Jimmy John's. And then in today's world, there's no way for them to compete because everybody has been acquiring these brands at a stage, and the big boys are just so dominant that you can't operate on the same scale. So I'm really, really good at building brands up to that 300 unit number. After 300, it just becomes a machine. Anybody can sort of take it, and it's a different franchise group. Let me do what I do and then have those off and give these investors and these startup guys and my partners that we're acquiring these brands from an opportunity to win and win in a quicker time frame. It was just something that I thought was missing in the industry and more importantly in the PE sort of focus of the industry. Nobody wants to take the gamble on the 4 to 20 unit chain, but man, if you're 20 to 50, everyone's going to overpay for it. If you can get to 100 to 150, they stupidly overpay for it.
Yeah, I've done a lot of research on Tillman Fertitta and looking at the restaurant group. I mean, essentially a private equity firm that whose asset class happens to be restaurants mostly. And it seems to me like if you know what you're doing, you can do very well. But a lot of people just don't. A lot of people just fail in the restaurant business. I mean, even you said like once you're after 30 or once you're getting from 30 to 300. But I think you're making it easier than it sounds. It is still pretty tough.
Oh, I mean, it is hard, and not that's also why we bring 11 brands in right now because we don't know which brand's going to hit with the American population. You don't know what brand's going to catch fire in this industry. You don't know what food is going to catch fire. You can have the best food in the world, and yet the restaurant never grows because it just doesn't resonate. And you've seen a lot of brands right now focusing on ethnic food that have struggled because of it. It's incredible food, it's just maybe too early to go down that road and scale. And so it's to find those right ideas and find the time on what you want to do. It's not easy, but that's why we're playing our odds across many brands and not just putting everything into one, because you just don't know. And we will have failures. We'll get out of brands. We know that. And that's okay in our sort of philosophy.
Have you had concepts that surprise you, something that you thought there's no way this is going to work, or you've seen it and then it actually worked?
Yeah, I mean, the cookie thing is one of them. I never would have thought Crumble would have gotten to 900 units the way it did, ever. Banking all in on one. You would think the industry would learn from the sprinkles and the cupcakes and all that have come and gone over the course of time, but yet there's just a new version of doing a cookie. It's just cupcakes of today, just a different product. Those tend to be fads. It's why at Dirty Dough we're pivoting from just cookies to other things to make sure that we can survive past that point, because I they just don't survive.
Yeah, you don't. It sounds to me like you don't actually think Dirty Dough, as it stands today, is a long-term business. It has to get into other things, as you said, drinks and other categories, in order to survive. Is that true?
Yeah, without a doubt. You need multiple revenue streams. If you bank on just one, you're not going to survive. In the dessert field, you're not going to be around. Someone else is going to come up with something completely different. I mean, who knows? It could be hand pies. It could be, I mean, someone's going to come up with something else that catches that Instagram moment and then grow. It could be cinnamon rolls. It could be, and again, cinnamon rolls had it. It just, desserts tend to be a life cycle. And to the ones that have survived, have pivoted and survived because they've done other things.
What's the most profitable? Okay, I have a hunch, and I'm going to write it down. We'll see if I'm right afterwards. What is the most profitable kind of restaurant you can have?
Breakfast.
Breakfast. Why
Yep.
breakfast?
Cost on food is so cheap.
Interesting. Okay, I would have said beverages. I would have said just like drinks.
Yeah, drinks have gotten expensive lately, because of all the other ingredients and the liquor and stuff like that have come in. They become too crafty and high end. Breakfast is still flour and eggs.
Interesting. So a breakfast shop, and are there big breakfast only chains out there?
There's some great ones out there. First Watch right now is the one that comes to mind that's just absolutely killing it, and they do an incredible job.
Hmm. Yeah, I would think the downside though is that I guess you could keep the hours appropriate, but the downside would be that you're really only open for 4 or 5 hours a day.
They're open typically from 7 until 2 because they all pivot to lunch and then they close, and they do volumes that most of us would love to have.
In a
But
condensed
First
period
Watch,
of time.
yeah, and First Watch is probably the best out there right now in that segment.
What about so where do you see this from going? You said you got a strategy like a you're going to be holding some, but you're not afraid to spin off and sell. Is there a plan? Have you structured this as a fund that you have to liquidate at some point, or is this just an
Nope.
evergreen type thing?
It's an evergreen type thing. There's no fund, no requirements. We can liquidate things when we want to, um, and sort of grow at the speed that we need to. That's the other reason why we did it this way instead of the fund mentality. The fund mentality, you have to grow no matter what. And we didn't want to be stuck by that because that tends to be what kills restaurants. Restaurants need to grow at their organic growth and not at because someone says, I want to sell in 3 years. So you can't force restaurant success. You can't make something go faster. The restaurants either go when they go or they don't. And you just have to give them the tools to see if it catches on or if it doesn't.
Yeah, as you said, it's about timing. Also, it's the culture of the moment. What do people want? You talked about ethnic food, and sometimes ethnic food hits, and sometimes it hits 3 years later.
Correct. I mean, we have an Indian concept that we're bringing into the portfolio, and that's a gamble on a very very ethnic version. But is Indian right today? Maybe, maybe not. I do feel in the next 3 to 5 years, it's going to be a big component of our food space. So we're bringing one in now, going to get it working the way we think it should, and then go ahead and hopefully in the next 3 years get the traction that we need because it finally catches up. We may be too early, but it's worth the gamble because we think that's a space that is necessary in America today.
What do you look for in a franchisee? So someone comes to you and they say, I want to open a Dirty Dough, I want to open a Jimmy John's. What do you actually look for to say, okay, this is somebody I want to work with?
Somebody who has passion for the industry and passion for building themselves. So I don't need the experience of multi-unit guys to run my brands. I need somebody who believes and is willing to bet on themselves to build a company. And that's more important to me than anything. It's that desire and having that entrepreneurial spirit that they're going to come into this, work their butts off, and do everything they need to make it successful. And if they have that and they have that sort of built into them, and you can tell almost instantly who has it and who doesn't, those are the people you want to take gambles on. And those are the people that are going to go in and fight every day like a restaurant needs to fight. Then, as your concepts grow, it's easier to go and get those multi unit guys, those investment guys that just come in and say, I want to buy 30 or 40 of these, and have the team in place. But at the beginning, you want to partner with the people that are hungry and the people that want to bet on the concept and you, because you're going to be such partners when you're building these things at the start that you guys have to have full faith in what you're going to do.
Do they
And that's
have
what
to be
made
food people or no?
No, I actually have found out that the startups are way better off without food people because they have no bad habits. And bad habits from other industries are under, just like anything. If you work in Google, you have habits from there that don't translate to Apple. Some are able to use the best of both, but there's a lot of people that can't change. Food works the same way. Oh, I did this for 15 years. This is the way we've always done it. Well, that's not the way my brand does it. You got to do it this way.
Have you had nightmare? Oh, I know you have. Have you? Can you tell us about a nightmare franchisee?
So we had one that constantly thought that everything that we were trying to do is just against them. And the brand is old and the brand is a legacy brand in our eyes. So we're trying to turn it around. And we went in there and sort of laid out, hey, this is what you got to do. This is why we're going to do it. You either got to get on or get not. And he looked at us point blank and he said, I've been doing this for 15 years. I don't need to make any changes. Well, for the last 7 years, sales were going like this. Slowly, but going like this as brands don't continue to evolve, you die. And he finally said, no, no, no. So we did it on the other side. So this is a consulting job. We did everything else that we wanted. We put everything in place. The rest of the stores started going like this, and his started to go like this. He came to us and said, you never told me that we needed to do this. You left me out of it. And we're like looking at him going, what? I go, we asked you to clean up your restaurant. We asked you to be hospital clean. We asked you to put in the new menu. You told us go to hell. I don't have time to fight with you. I'm going to prove that the other stores are going to be successful. And then if they are, I'm going to bank on the fact that you're going to come running to us saying, please let me do it now. And sure enough, he did.
A lot of it is people management, isn't it? I'm just thinking like you as a franchisor have to deal with, they're not employees, but they are business partners that kind of have to cooperate. And if they don't, it's a bad look on you as the parent.
Without a doubt. I mean, franchising is truly a partnership. You're making a partnership with this individual to operate your brand, and you've got to make sure they're held to the standards of the brand, but at the same time, they're your partner, and that you have to make sure they're successful. If they are not successful, they can hurt your brand. And so you got to make sure that they're doing everything to make sure the brand standards and the brand identity is what it's supposed to be.
Have you ever been tempted to say, screw this franchise thing, I could just build out 200, 300 myself, or does that not work?
No, I have. I mean, if you had an endless pot of cash, just opening corporate stores is a heck of a lot easier. But the problem is that you need so much equity in play to get to where you want to go at the same speed. It becomes financially irresponsible because it just takes so long. Now, Portillo's, which is huge, it's all franchise, but they've done it slowly over 30 or 40 years. And now they're at what, maybe 100 restaurants, but it's taken a long, long time to get there. And they're extremely successful, but it just depends on where you want to go.
Doesn't Starbucks in North America own all their locations?
Yeah, but I mean, Starbucks has the luck of being the first coffee brand and again, catching lightning in a bottle. and going public and everything else that they had behind it. I mean, there was so much cash that was sort of pumped into that company once it started going that, yes, of course you can do that. Um, but they're a rarity just like everybody. I mean, Chipotle's all corporate. You caught lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, the reason I asked about Starbucks is the and this is what I was saying before about the drink thing. My impression is that the unit economics of a Starbucks, because what they make is water and sugar and syrup or beans, and they have this immense amount of traffic. I'd imagine they're just incredibly profitable on a per location basis.
Yeah, without a doubt. But they're that's 100% in the breakfast arena in my eyes. It's coffee. Once you start adding some of those specialty drinks that they have are not as profitable as just straight black coffee because of what's in it. They do charge a pretty price, but once you start doing all the other stuff, it does add up. Um, but their volume makes their labor low. So it's a gross margin play like everything. If your volume is so high, labor continue you can only staff so much. And then yet gross margin just continues to expand. So it's okay if a restaurant runs 37, 38% food costs if volume's there to run 23% labor for the day because you're then at a 50% cash down, and that's where you sort of want to be. If you can be between 50 and 55 gross of your controlled costs, labor and food costs, you're going to make money as long as your top line's right.
Is it cheaper for a restaurant? I've always wondered this. So, like, if you're a restaurant that just specializes in wings, and I think you said you had a wing chain, versus a restaurant that sells a whole bunch of things, and one of those things is wings, maybe like a cheesecake factory, or any restaurant that's just kind of a general food restaurant, is it a lot better financially to do the hey, we just do wings, or does that not really make an impact?
So, I mean, on the individual item, yes, I make more money at the wing place than I would at my, full service restaurant that has wings because of the buying power, typically, of what I buy. But it truly depends on what the restaurant is. And it's a commodity purchase. And if you buy enough of anything, you get better pricing. I mean, it's just the way it works. So Wingstop does a great job at controlling wing price because they buy so much. And so they're able to negotiate and get their price down compared to even my brands that doesn't have the same buying power as them. I fight for their scraps right now.
And that actually might be a strategy in itself. If you know that there's a category where there's a player that's dominating, and therefore they have pricing power, and they're bringing down the supply, or I guess the price of the supply, that could actually be a reason, a tailwind to get into a business.
And I mean, we look at it as a tailwind because they've already done the hard work on educating the consumer that wings are an everyday item. So we're excited about the brand because there's a couple guys, there's a lot of players, but there's no dominant second person in the industry. There's Wingstop and then everybody else. So we can quickly scale to become the dominant second, and second is great. To be the second biggest wing brand, I'll be laughing continually. Um, but they've done all the work educating the consumer that wings are to be eaten all year, not just during football games. They've educated that it's a delivered product that you should be eating at home. They've issued that you should have it all the time and that eating off the bone is not disgusting to women. They've done all the work and the branding and the marketing and everything else that I can run up against them and they've helped me educate my consumer base, which to me makes it really, really simple. And Subway did it for the sub sandwiches, along with Blimpies. Those wars back in the day paved the way for Jimmy John's to jump in and grow the speed that we went because everyone then was eating a sub sandwich because Subway overpopulated.
Something else I've always wondered, when you have a restaurant, a place like Baskin Robbins or frozen yogurt, you name it, although frozen yogurt got pretty trendy for a while, but let's just take an ice cream shop. How do those guys stay in business in, let's say, a colder climate like a Chicago or New York for half the year?
I question that too. I don't know. I mean, I really don't because you pay rent all year. So the volume has to be off the shelf, and I've never gone into and I would never enter just an ice cream spot because of that reason. It's very scary. But yet, you think about it, they may not have the same volume, and every restaurant has peaks and valleys. They just plan their peaks and their valley to support the rest of it. You just have to know how to budget.
So it works. You know that you're going to make 3 or 4 times, let's say, in the summer months what you would in the winter months, and that supports the rent for the winter months.
Yep. Yep.
And you talked earlier about, I think you said at Jimmy John's, you said 300 locations, and I think you said 700 franchisees. Was that right?
700 sold by the time I left.
Sold. So what
So
does that mean?
700
Like,
700 individual locations sold.
got it.
There
So
were
that
300 open and then an additional 700 sold.
and so
So
that's the
when I left,
runway that you
yep.
had after you left.
Hmm.
And what's the rollout like? So if you've sold 700, does that mean they're going to roll out over 2 years, 5 years, 10 years?
So typically back then, it's open up your first store, and then every 9 months, we would make you open up your next one if you signed a multi-unit deal. You would be given 9 months to open up your first location. So from the time you signed to the time you open, it was 9 months. Now you do build out schedules where it's 9 months, and then that shrinks. Then you get 9 months, then 6 months, then 5 months, then 4 months. We've gotten smarter over time to push that runway even faster. We get more stores open at a quicker pace.
And you like it, I assume, when the same person is opening multiple stores.
It makes training easier and makes our costs go down because we know they have the operations and the team that they can train in their own stores and move it on to the next store. And our chance of success on that second store being successful is way better than the first store because they have a full team that they're able to train and put in place.
So, what's your strategy now for the next 2, 3, 5 years? What kind of categories are you looking at, and what's the if there's a restaurateur listening in right now, what's sort of your checklist?
So, I mean, our biggest thing that we're working on right now is to grow the brands that we're in. We don't need to make another acquisition. We have the brands that we can grow for the next 3 to 5 years. Our goal is to be 1,000 restaurants in 5 years. That's sort of where we sort of set the gamut on where we wanted to be. Have 1,000 restaurants operating within 5 years and have $1 billion in system wide sales. So we set lofty, lofty goals. Again, maybe too lofty, maybe not achievable, but if you don't dream big, you don't win big. And so that's always been my sort of philosophy. I got to overshoot and then come in wherever I can to win. So we sort of have that sort of set up. We'll look at other brands. We'll decide what brands, obviously, because we get deals all the time. We'll probably make another acquisition, even though I said I don't need it. That doesn't mean I won't. And then it's to continue to give back to the other people in the industry. Our job right now is to make sure that we're educating these startups so they can be successful. So we can be their partner when it's time for us to take another brand. So as we've been mentoring some of these other restaurants, we're going out of our way to get to know these startups, these one store groups where we can help them and get to know them. So when they do get to two or three, we can jump in and then help them get to the rest. And that's sort of our model on how we can be successful.
And how are you doing that? Is that training? Is that just content?
It's continual. It's training. It's giving them resources. It's doing consulting for free with some if I really believe in the brand or believe in the operator. It truly depends on what we're doing at that moment in time and what the brand is. So there's a brand that we're working with in New Orleans that I believe in the operator so much. I'm not charging them a thing. We're doing everything for them. We're going to help with marketing. We're going to put together systems and procedures. We're going to give them everything in my playbook so they can go and be successful. And then if they use it and follow it, then we'll see what happens when they open up store 2 and 3. At that point, because we did all this for free, we'll get first look. Hopefully, there's no promise, but hopefully when they need to go and want to scale, we're the company that they call to partner with. We spend time, in other people's restaurants continually when they ask to give feedback and questions or answer. That's just part of what is so great about the restaurant space, but we're using it as a way to help build our company.
Have you written a book?
No, I've been asked that though, and I just don't have time.
I feel like you should, or I feel like you should at least recommend a book that people can read because you're so full of this knowledge, and if people had it, they wouldn't make the same dumb mistakes over and over again.
That's sort of what our mantra is with the company. I mean, our leadership team and our team that we put together has over 100 and almost 200 years of experience. We've learned from hopefully our mistakes that we've made in our past chapters. Our new chapter in life, we're putting those lessons to work so we don't make those mistakes again. So we can get to the point where we want to go faster.
Where can people learn more and follow you?
So you can follow me obviously on LinkedIn, Gregg Majewski. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and of course through our webpage at craveworthybrands.com and see all of our podcasts and all of that stuff that we have. Obviously, we'd love for you to listen to Room for Seconds all the time. We give great feedback and help the restaurant industry all the time.
Awesome. Gregg, thanks so much. This was very educational for me.